scheduled meeting of June 23rd, 2022. My name is Cindy Grivich Tucker, and I'm the chairperson of the commission. Mr. Brett Ragsdale serves as the executive director of the commission. Mr. Ragsdale, may I get a roll call?
Ms. Boyd?
Here.
Mr. Gill?
Here.
Ms. Love?
Here.
Ms. Strong?
Here.
And Chair Tucker?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Memphis Landmarks Commission and the local historic district provisions are established to ensure preservation of the structures that are of historic value to Memphis. Our function is to preserve significant resources, enhance community pride, and foster civic beauty and ensure compatibility within designated historic districts. The Commission is authorized to review projects and determine their appropriateness based on the design review guidelines. At this time, I would like to swear in the staff. You remain seated, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Anybody?
Motion to approve the minutes from Thursday, May 26, 2022.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report if there is one for the month, and then explain the procedure for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not have a secretary's report, so I will go into the procedure for the meeting. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda are found on the right podium. For each case, staff at the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, the commission will hear first from those speakers in support of the application, then from those speakers in opposition to the application, and the speakers will have 3 minutes each. And then finally, the applicant will have a 3 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from or answers to the commission. The chairperson may provide additional time provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the commission will be sworn in by the chairperson. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD planner at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from those applicants since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the commission will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. All motions made by the commission will be made in the affirmative. The bylaws governing the commission require the affirmative vote of a majority of the attending members to approve an application. The commission may also vote to hold an application for a period of 1 month. Madam Chair, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled.
Thank you. At this point, the commission will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience or the commission objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should do so by showing of hands when the secretary reads the case. Once the consent agenda is established, the commission will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole and will not hold individual public hearings on each case. Mr. Secretary, which items are on the consent agenda eligible?
Item number 4, COA 22-063-383 South Main Street in the South Main Historic District. Item number 5, COA 22-064-2294 Oliver Avenue in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District. And that is with a friendly amendment that, let me see if I can find, I had it.
Mr. Secretary, that's Cooper Young Historic District.
I'm sorry?
That's Cooper Young Historic District.
Oh, that's correct, Cooper Young. And I've got too much paper up here. Let me find where that friendly amendment was. Oh. Do you have it, Margot? Thanks. All right. The friendly amendment is we will add a condition that states paired columns shall be of appropriate dimensions. The applicant shall submit updated elevations illustrating appropriate dimensions prior to issuance of a COA. Thank you. And the last item on the consent agenda is item number 7, COA 22-066, 1939 Carr Avenue, Central Gardens Historic District.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as established by the secretary?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
I'd like to remind the commissioners that by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Boyd?
Yes.
Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Gill? Yes. Ms. Love?
Yes.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Chair Tucker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, at this point, if you are here for any of the cases just listed on the consent agenda, you have been approved. You don't have to remain, but are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like to. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, I would like to state that the minor COA applications as listed on the agenda have been reviewed and approved by the Commission. The Commission will now continue with the regular hearing of the major COA applications as listed on the agenda. Mr. Secretary, can you read the first?
Item number 1, 22-026, 1720 South Parkway East in the Glenview Historic District.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Okay. Can you come to the microphone, please? Could you state, both of you, if you're going to speak as well, right?
My first statement to you before I say anything is that
ma'am, I need
not
hold on.
hear well, and I brought
know,
my
yeah.
granddaughter here to assist me with that. So, with that being said,
State your name.
my name is Eleanor Buckley,
And your address?
Address.
1720 South Parkway East, Memphis 10-38114.
Okay, thank you. Are you going to speak for her at some point?
She can, I'm sorry, Yolanda Winton.
No, that's
she
okay.
Can speak. I'll just be.
Tell her what we're saying. Okay, thank you. Okay. Can you raise your right hand, please? Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes,
Thank you so much. Have you seen the conditions?
what she said.
Have you seen the conditions? Have you seen the conditions?
On the staff report.
Right here.
Will you?
Are you saying the request or what they're approving?
What the conditions are for approval.
Did Chris share the staff report with y'all?
Did he share what?
Did Chris share the staff report with you? I had sent him like the staff report and the conditions and conclusions and everything. Okay.
What?
They asked did Chris share the conditions as far as to get it approved.
Say what?
Did Chris share the information to get it approved?
Yes.
I don't know. Let me say this. When I came to the meeting before, I was told at that time that you would not tear the garage down, but you were going to make some recommendations as to how to improve the site of it. And I was supposed to be notified within 30 days of that time when I was supposed to get the information. I have not received any other information, and I didn't know I was supposed to come back here because I was under the impression, since I got mail the first time concerning this, that I would get a letter from you all the second time, and at that point I have not gotten that.
Okay,
So that's my ignorance plus my.
Okay. Why do we take this time to
What she said.
ask to review the staff report? Or he can tell you that who he has contacted on your behalf, perhaps?
We'll take the time and you can talk to the,
Say what?
we're gonna go over here and talk to the gentleman over here and he's gonna.
Well, so it's been not confusing, but Christopher Branch has been the representative for Miss Eleanor. So all of my
Correspondence.
materials and correspondence have been through him, because he told me that, you know, it'd be difficult to speak with you over the phone, so I've been speaking with Chris.
What?
He said that he talked to Chris and Chris said that it'll be difficult talking to you on the phone because you can't hear and he would be talking to Chris. So he said he explained it.
Oh, okay.
Kristen.
Okay.
Okay, was it anybody's thought that Chris was supposed to come today as,
Well, he came Tuesday, and I told him to come today, and he said that these two would be here today, which is fine. She is the applicant. She's a listed applicant, so.
What did he say?
He said when Chris went down there to talk to him. But Chris is supposed to.
Oh, well,
could you ask her if Chris has talked to her since Tuesday?
In reference to,
Pardon me?
in reference to the.
What was the conditions from
Yeah,
staff?
I just said anyone, him or y'all, to be here today. And if, you know, to make sure that he passed along staff report and, you
Is it
know.
any way that we can review it now?
Yes, sir.
I might suggest that we give her a staff report and then let Mr. Skinner go through a brief presentation just to update everybody.
Yes, sir.
And then I think at this point, you know, it's up to the commission to, you know, make a determination. I think, you know, we have worked with Mr. Branch as the applicant, but he has not been to one of our meetings. So I think it's up to the commission to deliberate and decide what to do with the case.
Okay.
so what are we supposed to be doing?
He's gonna give a presentation.
Do you want to proceed with the staff report? I mean, maybe slowly so that she could help understand this.
Sure. So Lucas Skinner with the Division of Planning and Development. Again, this is COA 2022-26 at 1720 South Parkway in the Glenview Historic District.
Let's go on.
There are two requests. So it was a retroactive request for new construction of garage, as well as retroactive request for site improvements for a rear yard wooden fence. A view of the site. This is the main structure, the principal structure of the home. It's a 1 1/2 story bungalow. Here's a view from Kyle Street to the side street of the current garage and fence.
Okay.
No, won't really go through that. So whether the project meets the district guidelines, we essentially found the garage to not really meet the guidelines, as it's a metal siding structure, metal roof. The windows aren't consistent with the principal structure. However, the fence does meet the district guidelines, as it's a wooden 6-foot fence. With that, we are recommending approval for the fence and rejection of the garage. However, if approved, we are recommending two conditions. One, that the garage structure be painted a more neutral, consistent color to the house. And then number two, just that any change shall be submitted back to this board for review and approval. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you.
There
Okay.
was quite a bit of opposition that had come out to this. I believe there was supposed to be a petition sent to me. However, it did not make it to me. So I don't quite know the parameters to that. There was one when we heard this case 2 months ago. There was also a petition of support provided for that 2 months ago as well. So it's been a bit of a wash in terms of support and opposition. A lot of the opposition has been based around some enforcement cases. I'm sure if you remember from 2 months ago when we first heard this case, there's been a lot of reports of service and repair of cars on this site. However, given these photos and the things that we know, we can't do anything at the purview of this board. So that being said, if approved, we would just recommend these 2 conditions.
Okay, does staff have questions? I mean, do commissioners have questions for staff?
I have a question. Is this case or this property still in environmental court?
Well, it is because we have not finished the case here. So yes, the judge is waiting for a final determination from this body.
Has code enforcement come in through environmental court, or have they come in and noticed the people working on vehicles there, that kind of thing?
So these photos are from 3 separate site visits, one in October of 2021, one in January of this year, and one in March of this year.
Okay.
So they've been many times.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Nobody is wants to speak in opposition, correct?
Correct. We have no opposition here today.
Okay. Does the applicant, do y'all want to say anything else right now?
She's asking, do you want to speak about anything, but they said that.
Did you have another question?
What?
She
It's open.
said they said that the code,
They can come in.
because they're saying that he's working on cars.
I don't have any other statement other than I would like to see this come to an end. It is harassing, and I have a heart condition, and this is more than getting beyond something that I can really deal with. So if we could just come to some agreeable conclusion, and I know for sure what it is you expect me to do, then I will try my best to follow through and see that it gets done.
Okay, thank you. Did y'all have, well, let's just close it to the public portion of this case right now. So I need a motion in positive from a commissioner.
Motion to approve COA 2022-026 for the purposes of discussion.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, commissioners?
So they're still gonna have to go to environmental court, right, or code enforcement?
Yes.
They'll still have to go.
If you want to ask him something too.
Yes, however, I would like to make it clear that Mr. Simmons, the manager for zoning enforcement for our division, has only ever had Mr. Branch in environmental court. So it's been a little bit confusing because I've only ever dealt with Mr. Branch. So that's why there's been a little bit of miscommunication, if you will.
I'd like to just state that I do think it's important for us to separate the fact that we're only dealing with the building.
Correct.
Code enforcement is what's going to have to deal with whatever activities is
The
happening
use.
into.
We have no purview over that.
Yeah. So if we were just considering the building, we'll keep our discussions to that. I know we spoke about the fact of this time period was supposed to be so that we could allow the applicant to have a chance to muddle through the options that could be possible for this particular structure. We know that the structure itself albeit is not quite in compliance with the way that this neighborhood is put together. One good point is that it's pretty much hidden from view by the fence. Wish the fence was a little bit better constructed, but you know.
Fence the right height.
It falls according to what Lucas was telling us, is that it does comply with the neighborhood's guidelines, correct?
Yes, I mean, it's a 6-foot wood fence, yes.
6-foot wood fence. At this point, knowing, and as you said, we are very cognizant of the limitations that the applicant has in dealing with this and all that. So I am delighted that at least the painting of the structure is a definite option to kind of let it blend a little bit more, even though the shape and the construction of it isn't compliant to this. I know one of the options was to even put a window in that side elevation, but again, the fence covers any view of that from the street. We know that it's slightly up on a hill. There's nothing street-wise that would necessarily expose that elevation to direct view. The biggest thing is just where you have all the openings, which is the 2 garage doors and the door into it and the window. So I'm inclined to be okay with staff's recommendations as it is, but as we've spoken many times before, there's got to be a way for us to nip this before we have these kinds of issues in the neighborhoods, whether it's some kind of being more, some additional enforcement or some sort of power being allowed to keep these retroactive applications from happening.
Can we also suggest some sort of landscaping or something that maybe would buffer the look? Is that an alley?
No,
No.
Okay.
that's the driveway.
That's their driveway.
Yeah.
And that's all, the driveway is in compliance?
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
I could support it if it was repainted.
Yeah. And I do think that that could be something that could just be administratively approved, like if that needs to be, it needs to happen.
Any more questions from the commission?
So there's just point of clarity. So the staff recommendation is approval of the fence, but rejection of the garage. So what we would be doing is approving the fence and approving the garage with the additional conditions listed in the report.
Right. They
Just a
said that
point
if
of
we are to
clarity.
approve the garage, then follow these additional conditions.
But I thought, so I guess from the discussion or what some have expressed, they could support the garage, which is the opposite of what staff is recommending. Staff is recommending approving the fence.
I know. and
Staff is recommending approving the fence and rejecting the garage. For the record, I agree with staff that approving the fence is fine and rejecting the garage. The garage was built, it is retroactive, it did not get a permit. They filed an application previously to demolish the garage that was previously there. So they knew about the process, but they didn't follow through the second time around. They just went and built the garage. And if we are to go by that and exclude that it's environmental court, exclude that there are claims from neighbors that an illegal car shop or repair business is operating, if we are excluding that because it's not in our purview, fine, we'll leave it in environmental court. But for landmarks, a garage was built or structure was built that did not have a permit. The property owner or representatives have a history of coming before landmarks before, and that time it was retroactive because they demolished the garage without even getting a permit for that. So it's repeating the behavior of doing something with the structure, whether demolishing or building, and not following the process. And I think we need to take that into account. And we are sympathetic to the applicant and understand that this has been a long process, and the representative has been the one to appear before the other entity, but never before Landmarks. It's just been her, and sympathetic to that. But I do think we need to keep in mind that if we're up here talking about retroactive cases and the problem with it, when we have applicants before us, they continue to, we end up with retroactive cases from them, more than one. I think that's something we really have to take into consideration. And it's unfortunate to be in that position.
I have to agree, because staff has actually recommended keeping the fence, rejecting the garage. I know we're sympathetic to the owner, but we're trying to kind of help mask what's going on, like she's saying that we've tried to do before when people come and ask for forgiveness after it. And in this case, we don't have the representative that you've been dealing with here that actually probably built it on her property.
I'm aligned probably, I think I'm aligned with you in that I would be okay with painting it.
In a minute or two.
I would be okay with painting it. I could live with it.
I do have a question, because we spoke about the fact that the permit process had begun. It just was never completed, correct? Is that what happened with it?
Yes, that's what started the enforcement cases.
And I guess with that point, where is there a need to complete that process, since that is part of the enforcement, just as to the building itself? Inspections that needs to happen. Is there anything being done with that part retroactively?
I don't know specifically. I don't think that they have not, if he hasn't filed for a building permit, I know it's not completed. So I don't believe it would be anywhere near the inspection phase.
But, and by that token, is like that alone, would that create an instance where if it's found to be not compliant, or, well, we know it's not compliant with the fact that they built it without the permit, but if they can't follow through with this process that they've already begun, would that put this building in danger in any kind of shape or way that enforcement would require it to be torn down?
Well, I mean, I can't specifically speak to like the building code aspect of the structure. I mean, given that it's essentially a prefab building, I'm assuming it pretty much meets building code standards. I don't know exactly. I'm assuming it does. But yes, this approval is holding up essentially kind of the judge in environmental court to proceed with everything else would like to see some sort of decision from this body to continue his decision.
Which is interesting, because
The cart before the horse is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah.
If they needed a building permit for that, for electrical or for whatever, and I don't know much about that particular, how that works, shouldn't that have been done, and that's what you're saying, before it even came our way? So that it's illegal right now that it's there. Yes or no? Do we know?
In theory, yes.
Well, there's not a theory, is there?
I mean, yes.
I'm not trying to be hard,
No,
but
correct. I mean, yes, in theory, it is an unpermitted structure right now. It also does not have to this moment an approval from the Landmarks Commission. So yes.
But which would come first? The approved building, a little building permit before it even hits us?
It would go to this body and then continue with the building permit. And if it was an ideal world,
And do we have a legal person that can address this here?
Well, I mean, this is a case, and if it's okay, Mr. Skinner, so yes, it's before you because it hasn't followed the correct process. Well, it would be before you, if the building was not even there, it would be before you to approve a COA. And we have, many cases that come before the body that have not followed the correct process. And so to actually try to rectify that, this body still needs to make some determination on what either was going to be there, but now it's actually what's there. And once a decision is made by this body, then the environmental court, and that's the reason it's in environmental court, because of the citations for the
Illegal business happening in a residential component area,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
And so,
Can't approve it.
And would you say that the environmental court judge is waiting on landmarks so that to complete this, an environmental court or render a decision can also state this legal body as well rule this way
correct.
about this
So
property?
if-
So it will
if
be
you
taken
were
into
to,
account.
Reject this today, environmental court would take that decision and move forward with whatever decision they make. If you were to approve it with the condition of painting it, they would take that decision and move forward with that decision. Whatever decision is made either today or at some point by the Landmarks Commission, environmental court will take that decision and move forward with whatever actions that they.
And I
Yes,
do.
ma'am. I've got one over here
I
too.
think I'm understanding this. So if we approve the COA with the recommended conditions, then we give environmental court the say-so about whether this building stands, and they can operate
They're not.
It's like, I
a
don't think,
repair. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I don't think
it's
they can
more just
operating
that
a
the
co-
structure
There
from
you go.
this body, like per
They
the
can't
Landmarks
operate it.
guidelines, that this structure would be
They
okay.
can't operate a building.
I know that,
Yeah.
but if we say that we approve this structure
And the building is,
and the building stands, do
Unfortunately,
we
yes.
give the applicant permission to operate a business?
Well,
No.
that's not permission. No, it's just it's hard to.
I know it's illegal.
Yeah.
It's illegal now as they.
no,
right.
you just
So
get the
basically, if
building.
you-
just get the building. It has nothing to do with the
Okay.
business in
Right.
it.
Okay.
They could
It's
have
nothing
this garage and have it for personal use
Right.
and have their
Yeah,
own personal.
exactly.
So
It
the
would be
environmental
there
So
court
just
judge-
for-
we're done after
Right.
we reject or approve.
correct.
But the environmental court judge would use the landmarks ruling to determine whether the building stands.
Correct.
If you accept the building, if landmarks rejects the building, then the environmental court judge can say, well, the building is not in compliance with the guidelines or with landmarks rules, so the building has to
Does it even go to
be
environmental
demolished.
court if we reject it?
Yes, it's already in environmental court. It's on pause, waiting for a decision from landmarks.
Okay. Well, staff recommendation says approve the fence and reject the garage.
Exactly.
And I feel that fence was there for the garage.
Huh?
It's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Also, commissioners, if I may.
Yes, sir.
There is actually a lady here from the Glenview, Miss Fontina Durham, who would like to speak, but obviously it would be up to you to let her speak. But she is here from Glenview if you would like to hear from her.
Okay, well, do we hold a vote to allow her to speak?
You can poll the commission to see if there is a majority that would like to reopen the public hearing to allow her to speak if you would like. If you do, then the applicant's already had some time, so it should equal out, but we just need to make sure that there is equal time, so.
Sure.
But we would, need to have equal time if you do reopen the public hearing.
So at this point, we're going to put us on hold.
Well, if the
If
commission
I'm gonna-
decides that you want to reopen the public hearing to hear from the opposition, then you could do that.
Is just a straw vote, or do we need to? What is everyone? Do you want to hear the
To
opposition?
hear from the opposition.
Okay, we're gonna hold then us, and we'll reopen it for the opposition. And I don't have the name. Do you want to just call the name?
Tina Durham.
I didn't hear it. She did go up. That's okay. Okay, so, Fontina Durham, you come up to the microphone, if she can.
Sorry, yeah.
Or can,
No.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Will you state your name and address, please?
It's Fontina Durham, 1663 Glenview Avenue.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? You swear to, okay, would you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm here. Well, I got here. Sorry for my tardiness.
And you have like 3 minutes, so
Okay,
just so you
I'm
know.
here on behalf of the Glenview Historical District Neighborhood Association. Let me get my notes out. One of the things that the Neighborhood Association is complaining about or filed a petition about, it was in support of getting rid of the illegal setup building, is because it was not non-conforming to the designs of our community. And another issue that came up in our meeting, in our committee meeting, was that we want our district to be treated just like all the other districts when it comes to issues like this. I don't know if you were in receipt of the pictures that were sent in to show excessive automobiles at that location. Code states that each resident, if I'm correctly, 4821, is only each resident's allowed 3 to 4 vehicles. We're talking about more than that. And then what's being drawn, I guess, customers in the community and everything. So that's the chief complaint that the residents are speaking on, and that's when they're sending in the pictures, and that's our position on that.
Does the neighborhood want to see it torn down?
They do. They want to see it gone.
Do we have any commissioners have some more questions for her? Okay, I do. About how, I mean, you've observed about how many, we saw some photographs, I assume, of the cars in the area that they've been working on. On a good day, about how many would have been out there, just for my...
Probably about 7 or 8.
Okay. Okay, did you have anything else to say? Okay, thank
Just
you.
glad I made it.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Did y'all want to say anything else?
First of all, the cars on the in the backyard have all been removed. There are no cars back there. The others that are on the drive are all drivable, and they do not all there at the same time. Usually we have probably 4 or 5 in the driveway. In terms of talking about what it looks like in the community, our community is changing. They are building new construction in the community every day, and the construction does not look like the rest of the older buildings in the neighborhood. So I can understand why you would have some problem with this, but it's just not mine. My previous garages, I have stated before, have become a hazard in more ways than one, and it was going to collapse before we decided to got busy and tore it down. I am willing to do what it takes to change the appearance as suggested here in the papers that I have from your office. The other thing is we got information from the city as to what we were supposed to pay in terms of money to correct the situation, and that has been paid. Two checks, $435 for one and $245 for the other. We did what they told us to do on those two pieces of paper. As I said before, this is terribly troubling and causing me a lot of pain, in other words, to get rid of the situation. And as I said before, I'm working to try to correct the things that were wrong. And I know ignorance of what you are supposed to do is no excuse, so I'm not using that. But we have tried to do what was requested from that point on and correct the situation. I appreciated the last meeting when you told me you would not tear it down. I appreciate that very, very much. And I am willing to try to do whatever it is to bring it in compliance. But if we're going to talk about what the neighborhood looks like, you need to come. If you have not seen, you need to come and see what is going on in the neighborhood. And this garage is just a small incident of how the neighborhood is changing. Putting up structures and charging in excess of $300,000, and the construction, the houses that are being built in the area are the same materials that are in that garage. So if you have a complaint with what's going on, it's just not this garage, it is also what is going on in the neighborhood in general. I
1 minute.
said my piece.
Okay.
I thank you for listening to me.
All right, thank you.
I don't mean to be ugly, but I sure hope I don't have to come down here again. I don't think my health was
Okay, thank you.
saying it. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to reclose the public hearing. We have a motion. Could we review the motion that we had made earlier?
So it's going to be as it stands. We're voting on it as it stands.
I want to know, well, we've got a motion right now that's on the table. Do we want, I don't remember exactly how it was phrased.
If you would like to divide the motion to approve one thing and reject another, or take whatever action on either one, you can make a motion on, let's just say the fence would be the first thing you would make a motion on what to do with the fence. Well, and actually, you would still make a motion to approve the next because it has to be in the affirmative, but we would want to separate these two if the vote seems to be different. So I would suggest making a motion on the fence initially if the board so choose or the commission chooses, and vote on that and then take up the garage.
Okay. So do we need to retract, does he need to redo his motion or someone?
Yes, I think that someone, either Mr. Gill can restate his motion for that if he chooses to.
Yeah. Well, the first one has to be, we have to, yeah.
All right, you just for,
Yeah.
all right, Motion to approve COA 2022-026 for the purposes of discussion.
If you want, can make a motion to approve the fence only.
Fence only.
Okay. Motion to approve a 6-foot rear wooden fence only. Do you want to vote on that motion first?
Yes, is there any discussion on that?
And can I get a second on that as well?
Second. Okay, thank you. Any more discussion on the fence? Okay, can we have a vote on that?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Boyd? Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Love?
Yes.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Chair Tucker?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay.
So now we need a motion on the garage.
On
in
the
affirmative.
garage.
So a second motion to approve. Oh, do you want to reject?
It needs to be in the affirmative.
It's got to be in the positive. Then we can reject it.
You can actually just make a motion to approve it. If you want to make that motion with staff conditions, and then the commission can vote on that.
On either tearing it down or painting it?
Either approval with that condition or rejection, or not approving it. essentially.
Period.
Okay. I'll let you propose that motion.
And make sure, get real close so they can.
For the purpose, Madam Chair, for the purposes of discussion, item COA 2022-026, 1720 South Parkway East in the Glenview Historic District, approval of staff recommendation, rejection of the garage, retroactive.
And actually, Ms. Strong, I know this is a little bit confusing, but the motion has to be made in the affirmative. That does not mean that you agree with it, anybody that, just to be clear on that. But the motion is made in the affirmative, and so you would be voting to approve the garage with the condition, if you so choose, of painting it. You don't have to vote yes on that. You can still vote no, which would be rejection. So I'm not sure if that's clear or not. And I think I understand, so
Madam Chair, we're voting on COA 2022-026, 1720 South Parkway East, Glenview Historic District. For the purposes of discussion and for the approval per the staff recommendation for the garage, 1, the structure shall be painted a more neutral, consistent color to the principal structure. In the affirmative. Rejection.
that's fine. I think
Okay.
That's it right now.
Okay.
And then we can get a second on that and discussion. Do we have-
Okay, so,
Second.
okay, well, yeah. So is there some, you commissioners want to discuss that?
I'm just gonna say two things. One,
So you can make sure you can hear it.
she's not wrong about the new houses in the neighborhood at all. So, I do agree with that. She is absolutely not wrong about that. 2, we always come into this issue where, people are asking for forgiveness instead of permission. So we always struggle with what to do, about that. 3, it does not give me a lot of heartburn to paint, as I mentioned earlier, to paint it. However, the neighborhood doesn't want the structure there. However, again, it's not gonna matter, whether the garage is there or not, it's not gonna curtail any of the activity that's there. It's not, whether that garage is there or not, if that other gentleman wants to continue with the chop shop thing that's happening there, he's going to do that.
But that's not our problem.
It's not, but I'm
That's
saying.
code.
But I feel like the sentiment is that if the garage comes down, it will curtail the activity, and that's not gonna happen.
That's not my sentiment on it particularly. Yes, it holds a little bit of thought process, but it's the fact that, again,
But I think it's a sentiment of the
knowingly
neighborhood too.
someone put it up, and the neighborhood is trying to not, they're against it too.
They are very much so against it.
Ladies?
You can't help but notice that one of the people for it is the actual person who is operating out of this facility. I'm similar to that. It's like, honestly, when do we put our foot down? I guess comes down to the question to Natasha's point about, or Commissioner Strong, sorry.
That what?
That this building was intentionally put up without going through the proper process. So this is part of this proper process that would have happened had that building been built before or not. We would have still had to review this design, and honestly, we would have rejected it had that come through and be like, well, no, a pre-finished metal building is not appropriate in this neighborhood regardless. I cannot, and I'm trying to scour my brain of all of the buildings that have been going up into Glenview, and I cannot say a full-on pre-finished metal building is among those options that have. Not saying that a metal construction isn't happening. That's different, but complete, essentially a little baby warehouse happening on this property. I cannot, for the life of me, pinpoint that actually happening. And part of it, my concern is the fact that Mr. Skinner over here has been dealing with a party who decided not to show up.
More than once.
More than once. And he essentially is the culprit behind the entire building operation. The applicant right now, yes, her name is on it because it's her property, but she's not the one dealing with this, and nor is the one operating out of it, nor is the one basically causing all of us heartburn about this structure. So I am at a sort of two minds where I would love to give this a pass, but it's kind of like, but why? But why?
Any more discussion, commissioners? Have anything? Did you restate?
Yes, and I do want to be clear because, again, this does get confusing. So the motion that has to be made in the affirmative, which Ms. Strong did. So the motion is to approve the garage with the condition that it be painted. So a yes vote is for that, and a no vote is for rejecting the garage.
A no vote is for rejecting the garage.
Correct.
The other is for painting it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we ready for vote?
Because it had to be in the affirmative.
Pardon me?
Motion had to be in the affirmative. Because the motion had to be in the affirmative, which is why.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure everybody knows when they're voting that a no vote is
To reject the
rejecting
project.
garage. Yes, and a yes vote is for yes. All right, are you ready for the vote?
Are y'all ready? Yep. Okay.
Ms. Strong?
No.
Ms. Love?
No.
Mr. Gill?
No.
Ms. Boyd?
No.
Ms. Doss?
No.
Ms. Tucker?
No.
Chair Tucker? Motion fails.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And our next case is item number 2, COA 22-060-1030 Monticello Drive in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District.
Okay, is the applicant present? Hello?
I believe a representative from Windows USA was supposed to be here.
Okay. Can you come to the...
Can you come? Could you state your name and address, please?
Carlos Herrera.
Address?
111 La Bella Bay, Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have you been given, have you seen the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with the staff report?
The only thing, the owner of the home would like, they don't want any of the lights, the divided lights in the windows. And there's a house directly across the street that doesn't have divided lights in it.
Okay.
So we asked that we get the approval to just do a 1/1.
Okay, do we have anybody in opposition to this or in favor?
No.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Can we see the staff? Do y'all want to see the staff report?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Aisha Penzes, Division of Planning and Development. Item before you is an approval request for exterior alterations to replace 15 windows at 1030 Monticello Drive in Valentine Evergreen Historic District. Subject property is a contributing structure of Valentine Hills National Register District, and windows are described as 6/6 double hung, some as pairs, and a multi-light stationary picture window flanked by 6/6 double hung windows on the front facade of the property. These images from Google Street View shows the current condition of the windows, which are original to the structure. The applicant is proposing to replace 15 windows with vinyl 1/1 double hung windows as shown as the proposed window details here. And we believe that the proposed replacements do not fully adhere to Valentine Evergreen design guidelines. Although similar materials, the vinyl material, were considered appropriate and approved by the commission previously, proposed windows do not match the original grid pattern of the windows. In conclusion, we recommend approval of this request with 4 conditions as listed in the staff report, which addressed the grid patterns of the replacement windows. And this concludes my staff presentation. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions of staff? Anyone? Okay. You have 5 minutes if you want to make your statement. Yes, sir.
We would just like to do what the homeowner would ask, is just to do the 1/1. There is a house across the street that has the same style windows, grid pattern across the street. And we've done plenty of work in this area. I've been here many times and been approved on everything. It's going to be done perfect.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do y'all have any questions for the representative? Okay. So I'll now close the public portion. I need someone to make a motion in the positive.
Make a motion to approve COA 2022.
So look at page 18 in the staff report, which was the nomination form for the National Register of Historic Places for 1030 Monticello. It is a 1-story, 6-bay brick veneer minimal traditional house built in 1951. Gable roof with gable front L and flush eaves. Windows are 6/6 double hung sashes. Some as pairs, multi-light stationary picture flanked by 6/6 double hung double hung sashes. I do think it's important to, particularly with minimal traditional houses, because they are minimal in nature, some of the defining architectural features are the windows or the doors. And so the 6/6 windows are architectural features to the house. And just because the house across the street has 1/1 windows doesn't mean that they were originally there. They could have been replaced over the years. They could have been replaced before this district even became a local historic district. So I think we should take that into consideration. And the neighborhood design guidelines specifically state that alterations should retain the number pattern and placement of openings on primary facades. I do disagree with condition number 2, because if you look at pages 14, 15, and 16, that middle window has 6/6 grid. It is not 1/1 or single pane.
So I feel like the reason why I did not have an issue with it, because I feel like we had this conversation before about another property, and I'm not really sure, I cannot remember what it was. But I feel like we had a
We
similar
had
conversation of a one
that
over
we
one.
allowed them to do the windows that weren't in the guidelines as much on the side, further back. Is that the one you're talking about?
I think
Not on
that
the
was-
front,
Yeah.
On the back.
where anything was visible, but on,
It was on the
towards
back
the
where it was
back.
not visible.
And on the
Right.
side, the sides of the house and
Yeah,
the back.
that was not, that didn't have
Street
the
facing.
impact to the
It wasn't
street.
street facing. So that's
But
why.
but it was also an economic hardship, which was different. It was a different consideration.
I don't remember.
Question of staff as far as when you were addressing what you were talking about, the picture window. Is there a reason why you decided upon that type of window?
Well, based on the previous cases that were reviewed and approved, we tried to make a compromise between the applicant's original request and what the design guidelines actually require for windows and replacement windows in terms of grid pattern. We made the recommendation to have all the double hung windows to be 6/6, and then the picture window, the fixed window that is in the middle of the front facade, to have no grids, because it might be difficult for the applicant to actually have true divided lights, that style of window.
And does the applicant, obviously they're in agreement of that, but did they want the one that you're suggesting
No.
originally?
I reached out to the representative,
Okay.
and she stated that the applicant, the property owner, did not agree with proposed staff conditions, and they wanted 1/1 windows with no grids for any of the windows.
Okay. Hey, guys.
I will say that minimal traditional, to Commissioner Strong's points, many of the examples that we do see do have the grid on there. And I've even seen the examples of there being a larger picture window with it being, a solid pane with it having and I'm not sure if it's normally a double hung, but you definitely have windows on the side that have that distinctive grid pattern as well that matches the rest of the windows around the home. At the same token, that era has just as much variation in window styles, whether it's a 1/1 or a 6/6, or probably between those kind of symmetrically placed grids is quite common, unlike with Craftsman where you have the whole idea of the 6/1 and the 3/1 and the 5/1 and things like that. So, I mean, for this particular home, it's appropriate to go back with what once was. It's appropriate to have the blank, the single picture window that's fixed with the grid patterns on the side. That can look pretty okay. And I mean, Margot's on the staff and she's like window queen of the world. So she has, I know she's had her input on the styling and the appropriateness of what they're suggesting for this home. So I'm inclined to remain with what once was, and I'm not normally that way, particularly because of the minimalist style of this particular home. That's just my opinion, though.
Any other discussion? Can we restate?
Yeah, I believe the motion was just made to approve with staff conditions. So we have a motion and a second. Unless that is amended, we can have a vote on that.
You're good? Okay, let's call for a vote. Is that all right?
Ms. Boyd?
Yes.
Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Love?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Chair Tucker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, thank you.
Does that mean the picture window needs to have the grids in it as well?
Yeah, you could, staff will help you with it.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
And our next item is item number 3, COA 22-062, 402 Stonewall Street in the Evergreen Historic District.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay, could you come to the?
Okay, so that's, we can do that as a.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would you state your both names and address individually if you're both going to talk?
Jessica Sewell, 402 Stonewall Street.
And I'm Matthew Sewell, her husband.
Okay.
Same address.
Okay. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you. Have you read the staff report?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you in agreement with the staff report?
The majority, yes.
Pardon me?
The majority of them,
The majority
yes.
of them? Okay. And we have two other speakers that will come up later. We probably need the staff presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Item before you is a retroactive request for site improvements to build retaining walls and install front, side, and rear yard fences at 402 Stonewall Street in Evergreen Historic District. A complaint was made to our office on May 17th, and a stop work order was issued at this property on May 23rd. These pictures from Google Street View shows the original condition of the property from earlier this year. From Stonewall Street looking east and southeast is showing the front yard of the property with a wrought iron fence on the right side, right here, as you can see, and here, roughly in line with the front facade. And these views are from Overton Park Avenue, looking north and northwest, showing the side and rear yard fences and the failing retaining wall along the alley. These pictures were provided by the applicant on June 17th, showing the current condition of the property with the retaining wall under construction and the old fence along the rear and side property lines here. These are the site plan and fence details proposed by the applicant. So I'm going to try to explain first the retaining wall and then second the fence part of the application. The retaining wall actually starts at the driveway here and then runs along the front property line of the structure of the property, starting from 0 foot and increasing up to 2 feet in height, and turning around the corner, going east along Overton Park Avenue here, and then increase in height to 4 feet at about 40 feet on this side, and then runs all along to the end of the property, turns into the alley side, and then gradually decreases the height to 1 foot at the back of the property. The fence part is that there's the applicant is proposing a 4 feet tall wrought iron fence enclosing the entire front yard of the property right here to be in line with the roughly with the front facade of the home, and then install an 8 feet tall wooden fence along this property line on the side, and then turn to the rear property line and decrease to 6 feet tall wooden fence on the back. Based on the design guidelines and the addendum regarding fences, We believe that proposed retaining wall and fence partially adhere to the design guidelines requirements. Retaining walls as proposed do not exceed the overall height of the soil they retain at this property. So we believe that they are appropriate at this site. Front yard fences are not supported by the district. However, design guidelines also state that corner lots on busy streets can be taken into consideration, and they strongly recommend that any front yard fence should be open fencing. Guidelines also state that the side yard fences should join the house at the back of the midpoint of the side facade of the structure. Although the proposed 4-foot wrought iron front yard fence may be considered appropriate at this corner lot when we consider the traffic on Overton Park Avenue and take this into consideration, the wooden side yard fence comes up to the point roughly in line with the front facade of the structure, which is not consistent with the design guidelines. In conclusion, we recommend approval of this retroactive COA with 5 conditions which aim to address the wooden side yard fence height and length of it. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners have any questions of staff?
I'll go back to
Thank you. You're not on yet. Are we good? Did you want to say anything? Okay, thank you then. Y'all have 5 minutes to respond and present your case.
Sure. We agree with the first recommendation that the front yard fencing, the black wrought iron open fence, to be a maximum of 4 feet around. The second section, second approval, I guess, or the second condition, excuse me, to be wrought iron, maximum 4 feet as well. We do not agree with the second sentence there. The section of wrought iron fence shall run through the midpoint of the south facade of the home for approximately 100 feet. We purchased this house with the current wood fence in its exact position where the pictures show, and we don't think it's appropriate basically to be penalized and for that to be moved on our account since it is already there and we purchased it that way. We simply want to keep the exact same fence and move it to the retaining wall. We're okay with it being 6 feet tall instead of 8. It's totally fine by us. It will be pressure treated wood as well. We won't have top caps because we're planning on rebuilding literally the exact same style of fence that exists right now. So kind of the front end would be the pretty end and the back end toward us would have the supports and everything. So there's no need for top caps in that distinction. The retaining wall is not intended to be higher than any of the soil that's appropriate, and it already has been covered by a second coating so that there's none of the cinder block showing through. And I guess that's our argument.
Okay, thank you. Do y'all have any questions of the applicant?
Were you not aware you were in a historic district?
Oh, no, I just thought it had to do with the house. When we moved here, our neighbor was doing a retaining wall, and we thought, oh, that's a great idea because our yard's on a slope too. And in reading the guidelines, they're really vague. They don't even mention retaining walls specifically, so we didn't even think it was applicable. I'm a reader, so I went through like all the other historic guidelines too, and like Central Gardens updated theirs so that they include fences and walls and retaining walls. I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe that's out of the purview. That's literally the only reason why, because I didn't know it existed. And the day we got...
That was all after the fact.
That was after the fact.
At the time, yeah, neither of us knew. She knew what landmarks was. I'd never even heard of it. But, yeah, I mean, we had called to see if we needed a permit, and they said no, because the wall was under 4 feet. But I guess we weren't clear on where the property was.
And so the day we got our citation notice, we went and filed the permit and tried to do everything properly. I wasn't aware that it had to do with a retaining wall.
Plain condition number 2.
Yes. If I can go back to the site plan real quick. So the design guidelines actually strongly recommend that any side yard fence that kind of meets with the building is to be up to the point of the midpoint of the structure. So our recommendation was to have a wrought iron 4 feet tall fence up to the midpoint of the structure, opening up the side yard of the property.
Wait, do you want me to move that black fence that exists already?
No.
Okay.
No. The black wrought iron fence at its current location as shown here is appropriate. The only part that we were concerned about is the solid wood fence that runs beyond the midpoint of the structure.
You would just like to see the wrought iron fence go deeper.
Yes.
Go farther in so that you have better views.
Yes.
Of the side yard.
But after I talked with the applicant, I actually checked the Google Street View, and they are actually correct that the current wooden fence comes up to the point where they actually suggest the new fence or the repaired fence to be. So they currently have that.
Yeah, we just want to rebuild the exact same fence, exact same height, exact same length, just out 7 feet.
Thank you for the explanation.
And I think I'd like to add that if you are copying the same exact fence, I think you're going to cover the top cap just fine.
It'll have a.
It's going to have
piece of
that,
construction,
yeah.
sorry.
So the current fence has like a 2x6, I guess you would call it top cap. The fence that we're proposing would be without that top cap.
So you're
So
not
there would be
copying
no-
it exact.
What's that?
Basically, you're not copying exactly as you stated you were.
The fence would be basically like the fence right across the street. It's the same style of fence without a top cap. There won't be any exposed fence posts. All the fence posts will be in the backyard. It'll just be kind of a layered.
Like this photo right here, it should be swapped, basically. So whoever built the fence in the first place, built it incorrectly per most guidelines typically, because you want the ugly part of the fence on the other side.
Yeah, but even that one has a top cap on it.
If you want us to build a top cap,
I think if you're saying that you're copying exactly what you're doing, you're just pushing it out, it would be most appropriate to keep it with the style just to keep these kind of conversations down. People are going to be like, yeah, okay.
I don't want to do the top cap.
Any other questions?
Let's leave that to marriage.
I'm curious. For the front yard, you want to do a fence, and you've started.
I don't think they can understand.
For the front yard, you have a retaining wall, and you also want a fence in the front yard. And I'm curious why you wanted to put a retaining wall in the front yard instead of just doing a fence, because I'd just like to hear your reasoning.
From a lawn maintenance perspective, it makes the most sense to keep the lawn flat, and from a kind of parsing it down perspective, we felt that it would look nice and clean and appropriate, and in keeping with a lot of the architecture of our house, to have those nice clean lines and just really continue that all the way around. So it seemed to us the most appropriate to continue that look, because it fit the house, and there wasn't really a clean way, because we weren't pouring a concrete footer, we weren't forming and pouring concrete. We feel like it looks best in this situation, built like this.
So for the pictures, I think there are some pictures prior to that where you can see the front yard and everything, because you're requesting to do a fence and a retaining wall. And if you go back up, I think it was sort of maybe the one before that. It's where you could see the front part before the retaining wall was put in place. There was an image. Yes, thank you. So I guess I'm just asking because the image there, and then you look at it with the retaining wall. Just curious why you just didn't go with the fence. Well, first of all, you said you knew you were, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're in a historic district, or you knew you were in a historic district or landmarks, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You all started on or built the retaining wall without getting a permit and ended up with the stop work order.
We filed for the permit literally the day we knew that it was required of us.
Right. And once you got the stop work order,
we continued work because there was rebar sticking out of the ground, and we felt that it was unsafe. And in keeping with the historic district and looking around at dozens of houses in the area, there are tons of examples of retaining walls. So we didn't think that it would be, we didn't think the retaining wall would be an issue for this commission, considering the plethora of examples throughout Evergreen. And we didn't feel that it was safe to leave rebar sticking out of the ground for an extended period of time. Until we could come to this meeting, it would have been over a month.
So you completed work, even though you had a stop work order. But as it was just mentioned by staff, the interesting thing about the design guidelines for Evergreen Historic, which we just mentioned, statement regarding fences. They specifically have this whole section about fences. And it's also interesting because they specifically talk about corner lots. And it says, the introduction to the design review guidelines includes the following description of the neighborhood that establishes the rationale for the Evergreen District's opposition to front yard fences. Through careful maintenance of the buildings and wooded lots, the historical and architectural integrity of the district has been retained, with streetscapes remarkably still as many were 50 to 75 years ago. These architectural and landscape design qualities made the area a successful early 20th century development and can account for the stability and popularity of the district through the years. Careful conservation of these features is necessary to ensure the future success and stability of the district. Therefore, the district continues its position that front yard fences are not in keeping with open park-like stretches on either side of the street, a hallmark of the City Beautiful movement of the early 20th century. If, for unusual or compelling reasons, the necessity for a fence is an overriding issue that sets one yard apart from its neighbors, Evergreen suggests the Landmarks Commission take this into consideration in its response to requests. This is particularly true of corner lots on busy and well-traveled streets. We strongly recommend that any front yard fencing be open fencing. The district supports backyard and side yard fencing and feels that too much regulation destroys the character of the alleys, hitherto part of the turn of the century charm. There is nothing in the guidelines that suggests the backyard and side fencing is not thoroughly consistent with the early 20th century look, and that variety was a part of the landscape feature. And this is going back to what staff was saying, just as variety was a hallmark of the houses that make up the district, where the side yard fence joins the house should be back to the midpoint of the house. And my point in reading this section or asking you about it is because in this instance, you are in the corner or in the middle, literally the middle part of that street block. And the retaining wall that's up, you know, it's one thing if you had the open fencing with the wrought iron fencing, it would be open, sure, but that retaining wall, literally.
There are multiple examples of that throughout Evergreen. I can send you a list. I found a whole bunch of them. I didn't think it was pertinent to bring today.
So what I'm saying is not that there aren't retaining walls or fences on properties in the neighborhood, but that they specifically went out of their way to talk about a centrally located corner lot, which is what this property is on this particular street block. It just stands out. And I just think, you know, we can discuss this later when we get to the portion where we discuss it as commissioners.
Okay. Okay, did y'all have any more statement that you would like to?
I'm not sure if there's any more questions.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We have two other speakers. Could Glenn and Bruce Campbell come front? Or Glenn Bruce? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, could you state your name and address?
Sure. My name is Glenn Bruce Campbell at 378 Stonewall.
Okay, could you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Glenn Bruce Campbell. I lived in 2 original homes in the historic Evergreen neighborhood for 22 years, along with my wife Jennifer and 2 sons. Our first 14 years was at 1531 Forest, until we got the opportunity to move to 278 Stonewall 8 years ago. Jennifer has wanted to live on Stonewall for many years to create a fun place for her boys and their friends, where their friends wanted to be. If commonly having 12 boys sleepovers is any indication of success, then this insane purchase decision has been thoroughly validated, and we're glad to be Stonewallers. The odd vacant lot next to our home attests to the fact that ours would have been the last home standing north of a noisy I-40 had it not been for the historic fighters in this neighborhood. What arguments did they propose that stopped the federal dozers from rolling across Evergreen and through the old forest, even when there were stacks of deeds purchased, demolished homes, and mountains of earth already moved? What values of this neighborhood did they fight so hard to preserve? What was their lowest point of hope? And what convictions encouraged them on? These are all questions Landmark Commission should be aware of. The owner prior to us had the house for 70 years. I wish I had heard her tell this story. We did learn something when the enormous oak tree in our backyard, a twin to the Sewell's backyard oak, fell 2 days after the signing the purchase agreement. Mrs. Woodward told us that her grandmother pushed the tree over in protest because she didn't want the house sold. Let that sink in. If the dead are fighting to preserve what they cherish in the neighborhood, beware. The entrance to the Stonewall development is marked by the stone wall and poplar, the widest street in the neighborhood, with houses set back further than any other by a 2-tiered open front yard. Originally, there was an oak and an elm in every front yard, creating a park-like quality down the street where the neighbors
You have
enjoy
1 minute.
the sidewalks. To be invited by the open yard to cross over and ring the bell and visit for a spell on front porches. Cars were not even allowed to be parked overnight on Stonewall because they would detract from the pastoral view down the street. I'm going to jump to the point. We were not given the opportunity to offer any insight or assistance, suggestions or recommendations for contractors or any encouragement, which is part of the normal neighborly benefit given the process required for obtaining the COA from Landmarks. Catty corner from us is referred to as the Gates of Mordor at 395 Stonewall. I don't know how that was approved by Landmarks. Maybe I think it's a bad precedent that is directly responsible for this very hearing. It is easy to look at it and make all kinds of assumptions about what is reasonable or appropriate. Maybe Nancy Baker could give some insight there, but it's an anomaly on Stonewall.
Sir, your time is actually up. Do you want to conclude?
I really appreciate the value that Landmarks adds in retaining these values, these aesthetic values, and the responsibility that you have. As a neighbor, we cherish that. But it's also important to know why those values exist. And one of those is the process that you obtain the COA is important for you to be neighborly. We can help each other and encourage each other to retain these values in the neighborhood. Okay. And I'm not sure that front section of the wall does that.
Okay, thank you. Do y'all have, so you could stay for a second. Do you have questions of the speaker? I do have one myself. Did you not get, do you live, do you live close enough that you got the information?
I'm sorry?
Do you live close enough?
I
You
believe
send
Mr.
out.
Campbell actually lives right across Overton Park Avenue, so he should have received a public notice.
Did you get a letter from,
We did not.
and
They were on our list.
Yeah, I know the list that I received from the applicant. In fact, I didn't use the applicant's mailing labels. I created them myself for this case, and I'm 100% sure that I mailed a notice to Mr. Campbell's home.
But, Madam Chair, that was after the work had already been.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, why
But
he's
this is a
aware of it. But that was
retroactive
well after
case,
the work
so-
had already been started and continued.
Okay. And, okay. Did anybody else have any questions for?
Which part of the retaining wall are you particularly against? Is it the very front yard portion? Is it, and I don't even know if that part has even been built yet, or?
It's been built.
All of it is built.
Concrete block. Right. And as far as I know, that's unprecedented as well.
He has it in his front yard,
I don't.
all the way up to the front of the yard, you do.
I don't have a retaining wall in my front yard.
In the Evergreen Historic, they have a landmarks representative. Are they active with?
Yes, but I don't see Mr. Don Jones here.
Okay.
He is our contact point to the Evergreen community.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, Michael Seeker in opposition. There you go.
Good afternoon. Michael Seeker, 227 Stonewall Street.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm,
Excuse
as
me.
mentioned, also a member of the EHDA board and part of the committee that reviews all of the landmarks cases for the neighborhood. So just as context, due to the 3-minute limitation, there are a lot of merits to this application and many things that I would like to praise for it, but I don't have time to do that now or on this forum. So I'm going to jump right into the reasons why I'm here in opposition. And to be clear, I'm not in full opposition of this entire application. There are many pieces that I think are very necessary and I fully support. It was great to hear Jessica and Matthew speak and explain the context as to why we're here today and how we got to this point. But there are 2 things that I personally and the board has also voted on that I take issue with. One is the retaining wall on Stonewall Street. So throughout the neighborhood, there are examples of retaining walls. In fact, on the Overton Park Avenue, all 4 corners of the homes that are on Stonewall have retaining walls on Overton Park Avenue. Very much an appropriate element for the street. If you take a journey down Stonewall Street from Poplar to North Parkway, there are 99 parcels. There are 0 parcels that have a 2-foot retaining wall abutting the sidewalk. I was able to find 2 or 3 that had what I would describe as a landscaping wall that was anywhere from 6 inches to a foot. It was a stone or stone facade, natural looking construction. And if you weren't specifically looking for those, you would not, they don't stand out. So this, by contrast, is not only at least twice as large as any of those, but it is a very in-your-face view. It's very, very bright and it stands out. The second item that I take issue with, and again, to be clear, that is on the Stonewall Street portion of the property, not the Overton Park side. The
You
second
have
issue
1
is
minute.
the front yard fence. There's one fence out of 99 parcels on Stonewall that has a fence on the sidewalk. That fence is 4 feet tall, and it is very uninviting, but again, it is not sitting on a 2-foot retaining wall. So as you walk by, it does not obscure your view of the street or of the homes around it. The proposal here is for a 4-foot fence on top of a 2-foot retaining wall, which puts the height of the top of that fence here. So as a car pulls up to that intersection, or as runners are coming through the neighborhood for the St. Jude Marathon, the fence is here. It obscures the view in a lot of different directions. And that's on the front of the property. Continuing on the Overton Park Road side, that fence goes from what will be a 6-foot height up to 8 foot, where the retaining wall raises in height before it meets the other fence that cuts back. So for part of this yard, there is an 8-foot fence, which approximately this high, that is in the front yard. And I find those two things not to be consistent with our neighborhood or our street.
Okay, I need for you to conclude, think of a conclusion.
In conclusion, I would ask the commissioners to consider those two very important parts of this application. And I would love the opportunity to discuss these matters with the applicants further, but I am very strongly opposed to those two pieces of the application.
Okay, thank you. Do the commissioners have questions for this applicant, this representative? Anybody? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the applicant has 3 minutes for rebuttal.
I would just like to state that there is precedent throughout Evergreen Historic District for open fencing yet enclosed front yards. There's also precedent for open fencing on top of retaining walls along the front side of a property line. The same exists on the side, and the same exists of retaining walls with wood fences next to abutting them on top of them. Given that information, I think that our application has more than enough merit. I simply drove the streets of our neighborhood and wrote down a bunch of addresses that had these exact same features. Not every house probably had every single one, a few did, but there is significant precedence in our neighborhood for the features that we are adding to our house. And we believe that we aren't closing off our home. We're making it safer for our 4-year-old daughter to play in the front yard, which is going to invite the neighbors across the street to come over and play more often, and the people down the street as well who have young children that we play with. And I would just like you to take all that into consideration, knowing that there is a significant amount of precedence here for the features that we're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing. Of this case, the commission will further discuss it. I need a motion in the positive from a commissioner.
Make a motion to approve COA number 2022-062 with recommendations or conditions recommended by staff.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Discussion.
I actually would like a little clarification as to what this front yard, because in my brain I was thinking that the total fence height, including the retaining wall, was a total of 4 feet, not 6, not 8, but 4. So is there, could I get that clarification at all? Because I do think that does impact the way that this home is received and is seen on this very prominent corner, something that even references to retaining walls on the opposite street, etc., it still looks at least like it's open and parkable.
When we consider the height of the fence, we do not take the retaining wall height into consideration, and I confirmed this when I was preparing the staff report with Mr. Ragsdale, and that's our general process, measuring the height of the fences on all sides, front, rear, or side. We do not take into consideration the height of the retaining wall.
Okay.
So the proposal here is that they want to have a 2 feet retaining wall on the front yard along the front property line, and 4 feet tall wrought iron fence on top of that.
Okay. In other words, they've already got the 2 foot, so they've already done the grading. All the landscaping is all now flush with this higher 2 foot wall, because, I mean, I know from the front elevation that we're seeing, it slopes essentially down to the sidewalk.
Yeah. They haven't finished the final grading, but that is the intent, that the,
Brought
right
the
now
whole
it's
yard
still-
up. Essentially, they brought the whole yard up, and now that created the need to even have a retaining wall.
Correct.
To wrap around.
There was a slope there, but it was the slope, and they went back, and then so the 2 foot retaining wall is there, then they will backfill into that, and that just hasn't been completed, but yes.
And I pulled up the photo that Mr. Ragsdale took today. This is showing the current condition of the front yard.
But prior to that retaining wall being built, the front yard was low enough where there was no soil erosion. It was just a regular front yard.
There's a regular, yeah.
There was no soil erosion, which was my point of why a retaining wall. You want to put a fence in, fine, but why the retaining wall when there was no soil erosion? Not that the fence is ideal, but it would open wrought iron fence. That just, when we look at again, going back to what the design guidelines say for evergreen, and looking at particularly historic neighborhoods. And that's one of the things I just think so often it's forgotten that Cooper Young is all about porches or the neighborly feel, or they talk about porches or being neighborly. And a lot of times with your older historic neighborhoods, particularly in the city, there is this neighborly feel or openness, not this gated off suburbanization type feeling sometimes in a way. And, it was mentioned about Central Gardens by the applicants earlier, and in the guidelines for the Central Gardens, even though this is not Central Gardens, retaining walls should be built as low as possible and at most no higher than the soil being retained. So even if that was the case, and I'm saying this because the applicant referred to Central Gardens, the retaining wall shouldn't even be that high.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, unless they decide to open the public hearing, there's no more discussion.
We
on the floor.
don't, yeah.
And they also say in their guidelines, appropriate materials for walls, brick and stone, and parched concrete. Fine, the applicants are using the parched concrete. Corner lot fencing should be set in from the street and should utilize traditional materials compatible with materials of the house. And, again, I just think the fence, fine, could be set back in. And this is picking up on sort of what some of the other speakers spoke on. Page 23 of the Evergreen Design Guidelines basically say fences and walls should be visually compatible with the environment of the existing buildings and sites to which they relate. And looking at this, whether you walk up and down Stonewall Street, this does not relate to the other surrounding and neighboring houses. And I'm sorry, you're just not going to convince me of that. And that's not to say that I don't recognize that there are fences and retaining walls throughout the neighborhood. But I also think you have to take into account the location of a property. Okay. And this is my last thing, quick about it. It does say using no fence at all is often the best approach in the evergreen design guidelines, but they want the fence for security, fine. But I do think we need to take into account traditionally, the use of fences in front yards is not a strong tradition in older historic neighborhoods. Typically, fences were only seen enclosing side and rear yards, so defining property boundaries on large estates. When they were used, fences were low and appeared semi-transparent. And many of those today have been more recent additions to the streetscape. So when we compare and talk about, oh, this fence or that, again, it goes back to, unless you know for sure, did it get approval from landmarks, or was it something done prior to that district becoming a local landmarks district?
Thank you. Commissioners?
I'm taking a little stroll around the neighborhood over here and, trying to see some immediate examples of precedents beyond us having, done our drives through the neighborhoods themselves. And I know it's really easy to say right there across the street, you have the gates, you have the, what you call it, the gates of Mordor. So, but even in that case, there still is a pedestrian level where you can see the home itself that's above those gates. And I'm afraid with the fact that that 2-foot retaining wall has been installed already, it's already bringing the entire level to a height higher than you having that connection any longer with the property. And I mean, I understand it's the ease and convenience of not having to lawn mow a slope. But I'm kind of with you, Commissioner Strong, with feeling a little almost like this is enough. Like the whole concept of even having the rebar and going ahead and covering that because you were afraid of safety. I mean, at that point, it would have been even more simpler to be able to take the rebar out until time that you could reinstall it if it's approved. And instead, the move was to proceed on quickly, which then made this even more permanent.
And to your point, when this first came through, we first received what was coming up for the month of June. At the end of May, I went by and looked at it, and it was not completed. It was just the part on Stonewall, the part on Overton Park was not fully completed. By the time we made it to the design review meeting, which was like a week later, or even after that, all of a sudden it's completed, and you have a stop work order. And it's like disregarding the process or even the authority of landmarks. It's like, we want to work with you, but then when you totally just disregard it, how we're supposed to take that? And traditionally, if you wanted something like that, they would do hedges or landscaping. If you want your fence, fine, and you put the landscaping, your hedges, or whatever you want in front of it, you could have done that. And it would have been fine, and it would have fit in.
I did a little Google Maps troll too, and I didn't see a lot of examples of that, particularly in the front. And I understand the need for safety, especially with a toddler. But I did not find. Oh, I'm sorry, but I did not find a lot of examples of that. Not for the front yard. I think I'm in alignment with the other commissioners as it relates to the retaining wall and then the height, the overall height of that kind of detracting from the aesthetic of the neighborhood and being out of line with what is acceptable for the neighborhood.
Okay. Anyone else? So,
Is it possible to kind of split this off? Because, I mean, I think this is more of a concern, and I don't know if you guys would agree with me. It's more of like a front yard versus backyard kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can amend the motion to either add any conditions or amend any of the conditions. So Ms. Doss made the motion and she wanted to amend that. If y'all wanted to discuss some of those amendments, you can approach it in that way. We still have the motion in the second, and you can amend that. Any conditions that you want to either add, remove, or modify.
restate.
I'd like to put forth an amendment or condition that the front retaining wall should come out and should be removed.
I hear that. I'm almost like, she said to take the remove the retaining walls.
On the front
In the
yard.
front.
Just front yard.
Portion.
And possibly, just I think the front yard portion and possibly up just to the side before it totally elevates. And you just have the fencing there, the 4-foot fencing, which is not going to.
You're going to have to restate that because I can't.
Only the 4-foot wrought iron fence without the retaining wall in the front yard.
Or have the retaining wall and nothing else?
The retaining wall is part of the issue that the neighborhood has.
But it should be, the wrought iron fence should be set in from the street. It should be set in from the street. The retaining wall from the front yard and a little bit towards the side should come out, be removed.
Okay, so do we want to divide this? How are you want to approach this?
I think it makes more sense to divide it into deal with the front yard and then the side and rear yard separately. Side and rear separately, or side separately.
So where do we go?
So, Ms. Doss, if you wanted to amend your motion to reflect this discussion that could be voted on the front yard retaining wall. So if I could maybe help, I think I'm hearing what you guys are saying. I think I am anyway, but you can correct me if I'm mistaken, that you would approve or you would reject the retaining wall in the front that it runs along stone wall. So that would be not approved. And I would just ask how we would want to like end that corner. I think if you look in this picture actually across the street, that side retaining wall, it kind of slopes with the grade. And I think I just want to make sure we clear that condition up. And so the condition would be, I think at this point, to approve the front yard retaining wall, but you would either vote to approve it or to reject it.
Well, I would think that we were even considering the fact, well, do we just not add the fence to the existing retaining wall? I mean, the amount of work that it has been there, but I honestly don't think it should go any higher than what it is. Like that, I do feel will remove quite a bit of the character of this particular property.
That is another option to vote to, that we could have a motion to approve the front yard wrought iron fence, and then you can either vote to approve or not approve that.
Yeah, so those are two options for that. And then if we were talking about the rear and the side, then it's merely what are you doing with the wooden fence, essentially. And I know right now I am honestly just a tiny bit confused because we're having these more descriptive visuals of what the plan is to be for the wooden fence. I know we just discussed even about the top cap, and then, of course, the applicant has a different idea, which might look just fine, but there's nothing telling us what that really is. It's like, as of now, our only visual example is what's existing, which has a top cap, which has, the planks going side by side, which has all of that. So it's essentially all we are referencing is what has already been built and what is existing, and we're having to imagine that it's going to come out all right, which is very difficult right now, particularly with all of the emotions. And we have the neighbors that are considering the fact that they did not even get any kind of, just feedback or being able to just essentially be part of this process. So it's I do think we need to separate it, though, because I think the backyard is much more simpler to respond to than the front yard. The front yard has two options, and maybe those both should be options. Hey, you have the choice. You can either remove the retaining wall and have the 4-foot front fence, or you can keep the retaining wall and you do not get to add the fence to it, and then leave that choice up to you, because either way, that'll keep the height to the proper, or what would visually be connected to this whole property. And I mean, that's just one idea.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense, is to provide the options between the two.
And work with staff on that.
And they've already said that whatever
Right plan.
fencing will match what's already existing fencing. So we do have an idea about what that's going to look like if it's the wrought iron. Now, the question is also, per the presentation, is do we bring that metal fencing back to half, or do we leave it as it currently is and just let them move it over closer to that side retaining wall that has already, the masonry? I'm personally inclined to say, hey, leave what's already there wherever it is and leave that alone, and build to that point. No need to kind of push the wrought iron further back if that wasn't the way that this particular property was. But yeah, rebuild or give you guys some idea about what is the proposed redesign of that fence, that wooden fence, as it was supposed to be. If it's not a top cap, what is it? So I know you guys have good aesthetics. That part I'm not too concerned about. So is that a way that we can do that? Do I need to state this in a...
But she's got it. She has the motion right now.
Yep.
Yeah, and you could offer an amendment to that if there's no objection. And I think that you could do this together, but if we wanted to simplify it, because if you are going to give the option on the front,
yeah,
that would be a way to keep this all together. So you can give the option on the front to either remove the retaining wall and you can have the 4-foot wrought iron fence, or keep the retaining wall, but you cannot install the 4-foot wrought iron fence. So that would be a clear, I think that seems like a pretty clear condition. And then we could, and what Ms. Love stated is potentially leaving the wooden fence to where the applicant has requested on the side yard, being able to go up to the front, if that is agreeable to Ms. Doss as a condition. That's something that wasn't discussed in depth, so y'all might want to discuss that a little bit more. I'm not sure.
And the only reason for that is because it's already existing in that kind of manner. If that wasn't a pre-existing fence, then I'd be like, yes, absolutely go with staff recommendation of bringing it back to halfway.
Just one point, it is set back from, currently it's like 6 feet back from the sidewalk, so it is moving forward. So you're correct, it is currently in that location, it's just set back. So
right.
Clarify that.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a shot. Okay. So I make a motion to approve case COA number 2022-062 with the following amendments. For the front yard, the applicant has the option to either keep the retaining wall or remove the retaining wall and install a 4-foot wrought iron fence, maximum 4-foot wrought iron fence. And for the side, the wooden fence on the side of the house, I don't know if that was right. We keep the wooden fence at the same setback, with the same setback. In the same location.
In the same location?
With the same setback.
Okay.
Is that right?
So a new fence
Because
is-
they're proposing to bring it to the retaining wall.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I'm just saying,
So it essentially would be removing condition number 2 that would require them to, so they can move it to the retaining wall, but Ms. Love's suggestion was to allow them to build the wooden fence along that further. And so.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially it would be removing condition number 2 if that is.
Okay. Do I need to redo it? You got it, or do I need to redo it?
Yeah, if that is the suggestion, if that's the request, yes. So we would remove condition number 2. Now, there may be some additional discussion on that.
Okay.
Is there anything else that needs to be addressed? We can't, you have to put your microphone on.
We're keeping 3 and 4 and 5.
Okay.
And 1.
Correct. So we have the 2
So
options
we're
on the front yard
noodling
fence and then remove condition 2, which would essentially allow them to build the wooden fence to where it's currently built, but it would be set
To the
out
current
to
one.
the retaining wall.
Do we understand this, commissioners?
yes.
Okay, then I need a second on that.
Second.
Okay. All right. Ms. Doss?
Yes?
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Love?
Yes.
Ms. Boyd?
Yes.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
And Chair Tucker?
Missing 1.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last case is item number 6, COA 22-065, 1815 Tutwiler Avenue in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District.
I'm fine now. You got to speak. Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present?
How you doing?
State your name and address, please.
Scott Carpenter,
Address.
1815 Tutwiler Avenue.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Have you reviewed the staff report?
Yeah.
Are you in agreement with the staff report?
Just to.
Or their suggestions?
There's none.
So there's no
I don't know if there
recommendations?
was,
No
are there any
recommendations?
suggestions?
Never mind. Okay. Do we have a position to this, any pro or con?
We don't have any.
I don't think so.
Okay, so can staff give their report?
Sure. Good afternoon. Margot Payne with the Division of Planning and Development. This applicant is seeking retroactive approval for the painting of previously unpainted brick at 1815 Tutwiler in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District. The property is a 2-story craftsman-style American four-square with brick veneer and tapered brick columns. The originally exposed brick details, including the facade and porch supports, were painted without COA approval in April of 2022. A stop work order was placed on this property on April 18th. Here are some photos submitted by the applicant of the brickwork prior to painting. The applicant, Ms. Carpenter, has stated that the brick was already partially painted various shades of red. Additionally, the brick columns and some of the facade repairs appear to have been repointed using a different mortar as compared to the rest of the structure. The proposed alterations do not meet the Valentine Evergreen design guidelines. 210-5A states that unpainted brick and stone shall not be painted except in extreme circumstances. The current conditions of the masonry might have been considered extreme by the commission, and painting might have been an appropriate treatment, but the masonry has already been covered with paint, and so sufficient inspection of the deterioration and mismatched finishes cannot be determined. Staff has no recommendation for this case. The Valentine Evergreen design guidelines clearly state that unpainted brick and stone shall not be painted. However, this action cannot be undone without causing further harm to the historic masonry. If retroactive approval is granted, staff recommends the following conditions. The applicant must pay the double application fee for retroactive approval of a major alteration prior to issuance of the COA and the removal of the stop work order, and any change shall come back to this board.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners have questions for staff?
I have a couple of questions. And I guess one of my questions should be directed toward the applicant. But one, how does Valentine Evergreen Historic District inform the residents that they're part of a historical district? And I know there's not a representative here, but I just wonder, and before you answer, Margot, is this the one that we most recently approved, Valentine Evergreen? This was a couple of years ago.
Yes, it's one of the newest districts.
Where we expanded it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So that was in like November of 2020 or 2021?
It hadn't been long.
October 2021.
July 2020.
Sorry, July. It was July.
Okay, okay. So, do we know how residents are informed that they're part of a historical district and if they're familiar with the guidelines?
I don't know from the DPD perspective how each neighborhood lets its residents know. It is on the neighborhood at this point. Because of cases like this, our department is actively trying to figure out how to remind people or let people know to prevent things like this. We are open to ideas, but we are actively actually discussing postcards right now. That's just one idea we have to mail to every single resident of a historic district to prevent this. But as of now, it is on each individual historic district to let its residents know. But it is part of the zoning, so it's yes, Valentine Evergreen is one of our newest districts.
And I recognize that this is a huge task, and it's a problem for all historical districts. We've been dealing with this for as long as I've been a part of the commission. So, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. You have 5 minutes to present your case and respond.
Okay. Oh, I would like to say that in no way.
Can you step up just a little bit closer?
I would like to say that in no way my wife and I would do anything to take away from something that was deemed historic. We had no idea. Obviously, we would not have painted it. We probably would have still put it in an application because of, if you saw that picture, the brick was clearly different in multiple areas and in grout lines and damage and whatnot. But we are rule followers, and we would not have done so without approval. I would like to say that we would not. We had no idea there was any kind of restriction. Just no information at all. And we found out that it was a very new, like you said, last year, that they put on that historic designation, and no, what's that? Yeah, even our realtors had no idea. Local realtors had never even heard of this for that area. So, we've lived in areas where there's historic districts before, and we've encountered that, but never had we had any problem like this. We have paid the fine, and retroactively paid the application fee as well. So one of the things we did not appreciate was the Memphis Masonry Preservation Board, or some committee that was sending my wife nasty emails about this, threatening emails telling us not to move to here, that we are ruining the neighborhood, and that we should go back where we came from. I can read you the email if you'd like to hear it, but not a very welcoming presence when you want to move to Memphis. So I don't know if you guys know about that, but maybe it's something you could look into. That's about all I have to say.
Irrelevant. Okay. Did you go ahead?
That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Neighbors that were driving by, flipping us the bird, and our workers.
The commissioners have any questions?
Yes. So you say you're new to Memphis. Where are you all from, or where are you moving from?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. And when did you purchase 1815 Tutwiler?
Was it in March? March of this year.
And you said your realtor didn't know you were in a historic district. What was the realtor's name, and what company were they with?
My wife can clarify.
What was the realtor's name and the company they're with?
Our realtor?
Yes. Your selling realtor, who you...
Linda Bedore.
With what real estate company?
I don't know.
Cool.
You don't know what real estate company your realtor is with?
That's her.
Ware Jones. Weir Jones.
Okay. Are you part of the Memphis Area Association of Realtors?
If she's going to speak, we'll have to bring her up here.
Okay. So you say you purchased it back in
March of this year.
March of this year, and you say you had a chance to read the staff report?
The staff report?
Yes, the staff report.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, one of the letters that was written in is on page 17 of the staff report. One of the letters that was written in for this application is on page 17 of the staff report. And it says, the white painted brick is now an eyesore and will require more frequent painting compared to the unpainted brick. The painting has also likely damaged the integrity of the historic brick finish. I disagree with the applicant's assessment that portions of the brick were already painted previously shades of red. In the picture supplied by the owner in the application, it does not appear that any bricks were painted. It was a beautiful brick house prior to the whitewash of the entire house.
That's subjective.
This is... I'll give you time to respond once I finish reading this. This is yet another example of out-of-town investors who do not care about the Valentine Evergreen neighborhood or Memphis. According to the applicant's Instagram page at Grace Carpenter Designs, this property will become a vacation rental. It is currently posted on Airbnb. My question is, are you all moving here from Phoenix, Arizona, or will this be just a rental with Airbnb?
No, the plan is to move here. I haven't sold my office yet. I have a chiropractic office in Arizona, and it's going to take a while to sell, but we did buy the house with intent to moving here.
And it is listed on Airbnb?
It is now.
It is now. And you say you've lived in historic districts before? You say you've lived in historic districts before?
Yes.
In Arizona or elsewhere?
In Arizona.
Okay. Since you've owned the house, have you had a chance to read the design guidelines for the neighborhood? Have you had a chance to read the design guidelines for this neighborhood?
No, ma'am.
You have not? at all, even though you are dealing with a retroactive application because you are
We
not
don't
in.
plan to do anything else. That's the only thing we did was paint.
So you don't think it's worth knowing what the design guidelines are?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
But you received notice and notification that you violated the design guidelines for the district, but you didn't go further to see what all the design guidelines said.
Yeah, my wife does the designing. I don't do the designing.
Okay.
She was in the restroom when you guys called, so I came up.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, when we found out about the restriction, we were shocked, but we felt bad. But we knew we weren't doing anything else to the house, so there's no other. I didn't look into it any further than that, but she did.
And you did not know that you were in a historic district?
No, ma'am.
And your realtor did not know that you were in a historic district?
I don't believe so. As far as the guidelines.
No, just in general.
For painting, yeah.
Because all historic districts have guidelines.
We knew it was called Evergreen Volunteer Historic District, yes.
Okay.
So, since you said you personally have not read the design guidelines, for this particular district, Valentine Evergreen Historic District, it states, painting is not necessary to protect brick. Painting brick is not recommended treatment for unpainted masonry, as it conceals its characteristic warmth and tonal variation, may also damage the wall by trapping moisture inside. Once painted, masonry must be maintained by continued repainting for the life of the structure. If a brick or stone building has been painted, properly remove loose and peeling paint and repaint with a breathable masonry coating. So my question is, when you all whitewashed this, did you paint it with the breathable masonry coating?
I'm not sure what paint was used on. The answer is yes. Masonry paint is what I'm being told.
As you stated, you lived in historic districts before, and you tend to be dealing with houses that are 100+ years old or seeping up to that age. Do you expect older homes or historic homes to be perfect?
To be what?
Perfect, in perfect condition.
In perfect condition?
Yes.
Do I expect them to be in perfect condition? No.
Okay. Do you expect there to be imperfections when you're dealing with historic homes or older homes?
That's part of the charm. Mm-hmm.
So what was the reason behind painting the brick?
Honestly, we thought it would make it look better and improve the quality and improve the value and the aesthetics of the house. We thought we'd bring something that didn't look very nice to make it look even better, like many, many, many of the other houses that I think look great in the neighborhood that have paint. And I'm not saying you're all wrong. We're here to apologize and be in front of this.
Did you tuck point the brick? I'm looking at that one on the right, the column. You tuck pointed the brick before you painted it?
No, we haven't touched it.
No, that's the question though. Does that need tuck pointing on the right? See what I'm saying? Huh?
Honestly, right now, what is our next steps? I mean,
The picture that you see is just how it was. Yeah. No, we didn't do anything to it.
what can we do now? I mean, we know that the building is now painted. We don't know exactly what kind of paint you.
Right. I wouldn't want to try and take the paint off and destroy the brick even further. We're here simply, I thought, to apologize and pay the fine and let y'all know that it won't happen again. And
They don't know if not.
Some of the major things that we do, I know with the white paint, sometimes a lot of the character of the home does tend to disappear a bit. I don't think this can be necessarily part of this application or whatever, but maybe looking into ways to kind of distinguish a little bit more, perhaps with a separate color, dealing with the window frame, the trimmings and things like that. Perhaps there's a way to kind of celebrate the character of the home where it's right now. As you said,
I
you have a lot of hurt feelings around you, unfortunately.
I love the look of a good exposed brick.
So that is a possibility as to maybe future painting projects. Just make sure you come before us
Right,
first.
Of course. I am not
that
arguing.
could be.
I will not argue with you guys on that. There's no argument here on our side.
I would say that it might behoove you to definitely make sure you check the brick, have somebody actually assess the brick just to see what is its integrity, what's this, if there is tuck pointing that does need to be done, any maintenance, as you said, now that you've painted it, you've taken on probably just a little bit more need to take care of this lovely building. And could you repeat what the conditions were? Because I think there was something mentioned. Retroactive approval is granted. Staff recommends the following conditions: that the applicant must pay double, which you've already agreed to do.
Already paid.
They've already paid, yes.
Right.
It's just in there for the record.
So, I mean,
And anything else has to be submitted to Landmarks for.
right. So I do think, I mean, we do understand just coming in and not realizing. I am actually more upset at your real estate agent not knowing this information, because again, when we say, let's just say Landmarks is not new. It's been around for quite a bit. And honestly, for any of us that deals with many properties here in Memphis, when it has historical added to anything, we're just like, oh, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? And every single one of our historical districts has a little packet that comes with it.
I understand not knowing is not an excuse.
And it's like, for me, I understand you may not, but that is part of your need of unfortunately, your reliance was on someone who was on their top game with that. So, and I think also we talked about some of the people who come in and do the work. It was like, it would be lovely if even those subcontractors knew. Where it's like, hey, did you get your COA for this before they embark on their efforts? So that may be some of our suggestions of, hey, we need to blast all contractors and subcontractors as well, and let them maybe take part of the penalty, because it is a lot for an owner to deal with in a realm that they may not be as savvy in, particularly in a new state, new county. And we welcome you to Memphis. I hate that your family had to deal with some of the hate, but we've got some passionate folks here, if you can't tell.
I understand. I wish if they were as passionate about retroactively coming after us, that they could have left a nice little notice on our front door. It would be a much better welcome, but it's not their fault.
Okay, thank you.
So with that,
well, I just have one question. If the real estate agents would come up to the microphone. Would you state your name and address?
Linda Bador, 281 West Chickasaw Parkway.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Do you normally, and this is just because I want to know, do you normally sell in historic districts?
I do.
You did not recognize the fact that that was a historic district and advise your clients that they had an obligation?
I know it's a historic district. 100%. I sell lots of houses in Midtown, in that neighborhood, Evergreen, all of those neighborhoods. What my understanding was, which yes, I did not realize that was the case. And when they bought the house, I was not 100% sure they were painting the house. Nobody talked to me about that, not blaming them for not asking me if they could paint their house, but they were 100% aware they were in a historic neighborhood. Once this issue came up, I immediately called the seller's representative and said, were you aware of this new ordinance the new status that happened in April or October, whatever month they're saying? And she said she was completely unaware too. She also sells a lot of houses in this neighborhood. So the answer to the question is yes, I know it's a historic neighborhood. Did I know they were going to paint it the day they bought it? No. So, and not that I'm blaming them for that, because they are, if you drive up and down that street, there are lots of painted houses on that street. Now, granted, they were probably painted
That
prior.
could have been before, that's
Correct.
irrelevant.
For
That
sure,
was before.
For sure, but I was aware of this new law or ordinance effective of last year. No, I was not. And I talked to the other agent. Her
That
name's-
does exist in other landmarks areas too.
It does.
And
It
it's a
does,
big
but I
part
did
of
not-
most of the landmark areas.
Correct. I did not, they knew they were in a historic district, 100%. Did I say, and by the way, if you're ever going to paint your house, you need to look at what kind of bylaws pertain to this particular neighborhood? I did not say that, no. But they 100% knew they were in a historic district.
Okay.
Why do I have a feeling you'll probably do that from now on? Be like,
sure.
oh, if
And-
you're
and
thinking
the
of
other
doing
agent-
anything to the
And
exterior.
the other agent has also said, who knew this was new? We did not. And I mean, I do take a little offense to saying I wasn't at the top of my game. I take offense to that. But yes, trust me. But, I don't ask every single client that buys a house in any Midtown neighborhood, are you going to paint your house? I do not ask them that question.
Just let them know. You don't have to tell them not to paint.
I know that. I'm not going to tell
Because
them.
I think most of us, I live in a historic district downtown. When I first bought one of my buildings down there, the first thing they said was, you're in a historic district.
Right. Well, and they knew when they
22 years ago.
They knew when they bought this house they were in a historic district. But no, I did not say and check to see if you can paint. I did not say that.
Madam Chair, this is a good conversation. I think it's just a point of clarification too. I think that we need to be careful when we're talking about this, that Valentine Evergreen has been a historic district for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been a local historic district. When we use these terms, we need to be very clear when we're talking about it, because I think, as she's stating, she was aware it was a historic district.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about this specific instance, but we get a lot of that confusion. And so as you guys talk about it, as we're all discussing this, we need to be very clear to people that, there are local historic districts that have these restrictions. And so those are the ones we really need to be careful of, because that can cloud the conversation a lot of times.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's close this discussion and public discussion and go to a motion from the commissioners.
I make a motion to approve the retroactive painting of the brick exterior of item 6, COA 2022-065.
Second.
Discussion?
I don't think there was ill intent, honestly. I really don't. I genuinely don't. I just think it wasn't being careful, and somehow we've got to get that word out.
So in terms of, yes, Valentine Evergreen is a new local historic district established last year, July 2021. But the commonality, or what's interesting when we look at the other historic districts that have been longer-term local historic districts, for example, Central Gardens, prior to them revising their guidelines, had masonry shall not be painted unless matching bricks is a problem due to a fire or act of God. They state, right now they state, if the brick has been painted, the preference is to maintain the same color as the original brick. As Madam Chair mentioned, downtown, if we look at South Main, in their design guidelines, they state, leave natural masonry colors unpainted where feasible. Where the natural color of a building material exists, such as stone or brick, they should be left unpainted. Masonry naturally has a water protective layer or patina to protect it from the elements. Painting masonry walls can seal in moisture already in the masonry, thereby not allowing it to breathe and causing extensive damage over the years. While color itself, and I think this is going back to one of the letters written in opposition about this, and it speaks to that, why color itself, or the whitewashing of the brick, does not affect the actual form of a building. It can dramatically affect the perceived scale of a structure, and it can help blend a building with its context. Many buildings are brick and should not be painted. It continues to reiterate that. One of the things in terms, since the staff report left it up for the commissioners in terms of us to, no recommendation for us to come up with something, one of the things that South Main states is using the historic color scheme of the building is encouraged. Select colors that will complement those of the natural materials. If an existing building is already painted, consider applying colors that stimulate the original brick color. Glenview Historic District, which we had a case from today as well, preserve masonry features that define the overall historic character of the building. Brick or stone, which was not painted originally, should not be painted. If masonry has been painted in the past and a change of color is desired, it should be painted a brick color. And again, it matches sort of South Main going into while itself does not, about the perceived scale. But one of the things that Glenview does say, match brick and mortar in color, profile, and texture to that of the original building or to another similar building, which is another thing to take into consideration. Use colors to create a coordinated color scheme for the building. The facade should read as a single composition. Employ color schemes simple in character. Using one base color for the building is preferred. Using only one or two accent colors is also encouraged, although precedent does exist for using more than two colors in some situations. And I think that goes back to what Commissioner Love mentioned. In terms of the group or entity you mentioned earlier, there have been articles or, you can look up articles and things about why you shouldn't paint the brick. But exterior paint is constantly deteriorating through the process of weathering. And unpainted brick is built for the elements, and you lose that when you paint it. So to back up to that, there was an article from House Logic, 5 reasons you regret painting your brick house. Case in point, removing paint from brick is almost impossible. Brick breathes unless it can't. Trapped moisture is the main issue in relationship between brick and paint. Once you put a membrane-like paint over the brick, it can no longer breathe. Brick is the ultimate coat for your home, protecting it from all the elements while letting it breathe. Putting paint on it is like encasing it in plastic. It'll breathe no more.
Commissioner Strong, may I take a moment? I know this is more of a conversation between us versus this conversation with, it seems like you're still directing it toward the applicants.
Maybe you could share that. I know you want it for the record, maybe.
I want it for the record, and I'm just reading it.
Okay, because you might want to share it more with them because at some point it's
right. And it's the realtor said I think it's helpful. So if questions come up with their future clients, the information has been shared. You have more of a background to speak on it.
And I think it'd be beneficial to even have that reference, perhaps, because I know in this setting it'd be really hard to kind of absorb to that degree. So provide that, if you could provide even Brett or Margot with that information that can be passed on, that would be lovely.
Thank you.
Are we voting at this point?
I think we need to go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we have an amendment where?
Pardon me?
Could we have an amendment where we're talking about the color scheme or right now it's just all white. And as you talked about earlier, the architectural features and details are just washed out. They're not present.
Yeah.
And I just think,
perhaps that could be an amendment to it where we request that you all work with staff to help bring out a little bit more of the architectural detailing that's present, and whether that's the trim itself or the banisters or doing something with the masonry components since it's all already painted. I think that would be great, just leaving it with the administrative in the administrative hands. So,
and I think also the option of looking at something similar to the original brick color, because we did have a case about a month or two ago in Central Garden, 603 Rembert, where they tried to whitewash a courtyard apartment complex, and that was the solution and recommendation put forth by this commission.
Yeah.
So let that be among the items that are looked into, painting, whether it's just the elements or if it's, because both of those options were available. So including looking into painting something that matched the original, even though I saw the original brick color. You have like 5 different tones in there. So this would be fun to try to figure out, but
Madam
let
Chair.
that be among the option, perhaps.
May I ask for clarification? Because I understand the intent of wanting to differentiate the different architectural features. There are different trim colors in different parts of the house, like around the door and the side windows. And I guess, can we be clear with the applicants on what the intention, or exactly what you're asking
Can you
them to
put the
paint and
pictures of the
differentiate?
house back up?
Oh, sure.
Yes, and I think that I was catching most of that, and I think as Ms. Payne's saying, Ms. Love, you made the motion, so you can either accept a friendly amendment from someone, or it sounded like you were coming close to maybe having an amendment to your motion, so
Right.
you could offer that we could vote on.
I think you had another image where, or maybe that was part
line.
of there, yeah.
So I believe the trim around the front door and the transom and the side lights.
The
is
windows
green.
and perhaps the fascia, perhaps, just, and like we said, nothing is, for my consideration of this building, thankfully, it has big enough windows and it has a nice dramatic door. It has enough depth that there are certain elements that are quite distinguishable, characterized with this. But I think it would be a good consideration just looking at, say, the fascia boards, the trim around the windows, doors, simple things like that. And to Commissioner Strong's point, if a flip of that could be considered, not, I don't think it should be demanded. I don't think that has to be an absolute that you must find a brick color that matched something previous, because
It's going to be hard to find the natural brick color after it's been painted.
Exactly.
And with the brick being multiple colors.
Exactly. So that's
It's
why
just
I
paper.
think if we're going to anything to investigate, and you're only working with administrative, with staff themselves, is if it's possible to highlight those features that are currently existing, as in banister, fascia, the cornices, the window trim, and the door framing. And it looks good, which I know they will do, making sure
So
that it
let's,
continues to do. That would be sufficient. So if that could be an amendment as to,
Well, we have to restate the motion. And with amendment.
Yeah. and
so let's try this.
If you have an idea of an amendment that you would like to add to your motion, I have some ideas, but sounds like you're
Give me your ideas, please, Brett.
thinking of terms like implement a differentiated paint scheme or something to that effect. I don't know if you want.
Adding that second color that Commissioner Strong was pinpointing out, yeah.
To give it more character and definition.
Yeah, to define the character better. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And that would be reviewed with staff.
Staff.
Yep.
Okay.
Reviewed administratively, definite. Yes. So that is the amendment to the previously approved amendment to accept.
And Mr. Gill seconded that.
Okay. Let's call for a vote.
All right.
Yes. I think she said you can roll call us.
Call for a vote, yeah. Sorry about that.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Okay, we got Ms. Boyd?
Yes.
Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Gill? Yes. Ms. Love?
Yes.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Chair Tucker?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Okay,
And Madam Chair, that was our last case.
okay, is there any new business? Okay, the next meeting is Thursday, July 28th, 2002. May I have a call for adjournment? We're good.